it's great to have that experience for the patient to get that reinforcement as they're on their way to their exam and starting that whole process. But for other doctors, obviously not, you're going to have those patients, those kids who are just extremely resistant, or they're almost there, or there's just that one thing that needs to happen to convince them. And I was wondering, with your experience as a part of this process, like, what do you do with a kid who, like, you feel it, this is going to work, but things are not going, it's not a smooth part of the process. So what does it take? What is that extra layer? Maybe the kid doesn't like the way that the lens feels, or they're apprehensive to a point where they're resistant, but you really think you can make that work. So what do you do with an extremely difficult case?
There is such a thing as a child that's too difficult to fit,
Mm-hmm.
but most of them aren't. I would say if I had to name the most common stumbling block, it's the one you mentioned. It's just the comfort, right? The level of
Mm-hmm.
awareness these kids get when you put the lenses in, it's all over the place, and most of them have an awareness or an annoyance maybe from the lens, and then you get the occasional kid who either their eyes are truly much more sensitive, or they've gotten themselves so worked up that in their mind maybe there's a bit more awareness than they think. And I guess my answer would be two-part. The first part is, if I can tell that their eye is tolerating it well, right? Their eye is nice and white and quiet. It's not red. The lens is sitting where it should be, and they're able to open their eye and keep their eye open, which is a big sign. If they can keep their eye open, they're not having a tremendous amount of discomfort, but they may not have let go of that apprehension yet. So appraise is a big part of that. If they start off, closing their eyes and blinking excessively and not really able to allow me to evaluate it, and then as they sit with it in, and then I see that they are looking around and their eyes are open, that's a great opportunity for me to jump in and say, hey, look at you. Your eyes are more open now. You're tolerating it better. You weren't sure you could do it, but you're doing this. Both of your eyes are open, and at that point, you can almost say you've kind of already done it, gotten through that obstacle. And then it's a matter of the evaluation itself when they've got the lens on is fairly brief. So I can kind of be efficient and get through my evaluation and throw a bit more praise and congratulations to them along the way. And then get them to the point where we take it out. And I try not to leave the lenses in for a really long time in that initial evaluation, because there's just no need to. I take pictures and I'll go back and look at the pictures of the fluorescein patterns later, and I don't have to study it on their eye for a long period of time. But I think the other part is just that expectations we talked about. When I'm getting ready to put it in, what I'll generally do is, I'll already have the lens pulled, the diagnostic lens that I plan to use, and explain to them where the sensation comes from. And in my opinion, only some of it comes from the lens against the cornea. A lot of it comes from the lens against the underside of the eyelid. They're not used to blinking over something, and they're not a soft lens. They do have an edge. It's thin, but it's an edge, and it's rigid, right? So they blink their eye, they're blinking over the edge, and they can feel it. They move their eye underneath the lid, and the lens is on their eye, and they can feel it. And if they close their eye gently, like they're going to sleep, the sensation is much less. And then I always explain, and that works out pretty well, because that's how you're going to wear them. They're not designed to wear during the day. So I've explained that part to them already when we get ready to put the lens in. And then once I've washed my hands, what I'll do is I'll show them with my hands exactly how I'm going to hold their eye open without actually having a lens on my finger. So they're not worried I'm going to put a lens in. I'll just say, hey, I don't even have a lens. I want you to look straight ahead, look at the mirror at the end of the room, keep both eyes open, and I'll show them, I'm going to hold your lower lid like this. I'm going to hold your upper lid like this, and I'm going to hold the lens just an inch or so from your eye, and I'm going to say, are you ready? And then you're going to say yes, and I'm going to put it on. And sometimes they'll ask, well, what are you going to do if I say no? And I'll say, well, I'm not going to put it on, but we're going to regroup, and I'm going to ask you again. We don't want to give up on it, right? But we'll get you ready. And for some patients who do have a high level of fear or apprehension, that feeling that they're in control goes a long ways. I'm not going to pry their lids open. I'm just going to hold their lids open. If you have to pry their lid open, then you got to get the kid more relaxed. They're looking all over the place. It's not going to go where it's supposed to go anyway. So they need to kind of be a willing participant and look straight ahead. And so when I go through that, and then once they kind of understand the process, then I'll get the lens and I'll put it on the tip of my finger and I'll get in position. And when they see that I'm telling the truth, I'm doing what I said I was going to do, having them look straight ahead and, are you ready? Yes, I put it in. And then that second eye, if the first eye goes well, the second eye goes a whole lot better. And I'll always kind of remind them as soon as I put that first lens in, I'll say, okay, remember how I said it was going to feel, right? Blink, it's really weird, right? It's an odd sensation. And now close your eye gently, don't squeeze it, just close it gently. And you can see, and some of them, when I've prepped them for how it's going to feel, they'll say, oh, this isn't as bad as you said. This isn't really much of anything. But even the ones that do, at least it's not a shock to them. They're seeing it feels about like what I said, and it does feel a little bit more comfortable once they close their eyes.
Right. So it's just a process of helping them feel more comfortable with the fact that this isn't like the worst thing ever, and that,
Sure,
you can get used to it. And kids, they're, resilient in the idea that they'll get used to something. And even if that's initial, apprehension and fear of it, once you get them working with it, then you can really bring them around to it.
Yeah.
So
and I'm not opposed to using other tricks or techniques either. Distraction can be a really helpful thing.
Sure.
One of the things I'll tend to do is once we've got both of the lenses in, and I've kind of put the fluorescein in, and I've evaluated, and I'm getting ready to take it out, I'll usually say, hey, you want to see something pretty cool? And I'll bring them over to the mirror, the acuity mirror, and I got a little cobalt blue pen light, just like the blue light on the slit lamp, and I'll shine that and let them look in the mirror, and it's a pretty cool thing to see your eyes with the little green rings for the Ortho-K pattern.
Right. Yeah.
And they've never seen that, and they didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know the stuff I put in glows under the blue light, and that distraction, you get a little smile, and they think it's pretty cool, and the parents think it's pretty cool. Sometimes they take a picture. It's a nice little photo op for them. My kid went in for their Ortho-K evaluation. I got this cool picture. Their eyes look glowing green and what have you. And then, then they've kind of let their guard down a little bit, and the rest of it's easy. It's just time to take the lenses out and talk to them a little bit.
Love that.
Absolutely. And it's one of the other things that I wanted to mention too is, you mentioned earlier, what if you have somebody who's really struggling? I take that a little further. What if you have a patient who just simply can't do it, right? And they come up once in a while. They're not common, fortunately, but they come up once in a while. They're just, you can't get near their eye, right? You're fortunately, it's not that many of them, but you can make that a success too. Ortho-K isn't the only way to do myopia control. There's soft lenses. If they're just way too aware, there's MiSight, there's the natural view. There's some soft lenses out there, and there's atropine, right? And I do a lot more Ortho-K than I do those other methods, but I want them in my arsenal, right? It's hard to imagine a child that you can't do any form of myopia control on. I don't think I've encountered one. So, you just kind of switch gears. You say, that she's really struggling with this right now. And, you can tell the parent isn't quite sure they want to move forward. And you can say, hey, we're going to do a different format, right? Maybe it's a young child. Maybe we do atropine for a year and monitor them every 4 months and, check their axial length every 4 months and monitor them. And then you get to their next year and they've been putting drops in every single night for a year. They might be way more comfortable around their eye, and they've learned that maybe they don't want to wear glasses every day and things like that. So it's always important. I guess it should be obvious, but it's always important. You don't want the child to feel like they failed at something.
Right.
They're just not in the right place to go through with it right now. So and I always kind of turn my conversation with the patient and to the parents back around to, okay, this isn't going to be the way that we're going to help your child today. But this other way we can help your child today, and we can still have a really good outcome. And fortunately, we have a lot of successful methods to do myopia control, and that's one of the great things about this day and age, where there's been so much research into it now, and there's different options that weren't around maybe in the early days of Ortho-K.
Well said. Well said. Well, I'm really glad that we had you on the podcast, and I'm going to put a link to your article that we sent out in our newsletter. We're also going to put it on the AAOMC blog that's on our website. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes for this episode for people to check out. And if anybody's interested in finding out more about you or getting in touch with you, where can you be found on the internet, Dwight?
The easiest way to get in touch with me, you can email me at drdwight@caryfamilyeyecare.com. So that's DRDWIGHT at caryfamilyeyecare.com, and that is spelled CARY, which is the city that we're in. And then so through our website, which is www.caryfamilyeyecare.com. And so, if anybody's got any questions, absolutely shoot them on over, and I will do my best to answer them if I can.
Fantastic. And if you want to find out more about the Academy, we're at orthokacademy.com. You just click on that practitioner button that takes us right to the practitioner version of our website. If you, the listener, have any questions for Dwight or about anything in this episode, you can send those to thecorrectedview@gmail.com. And Dwight brought up the staff boot camp that's at Vision by Design. And unfortunately, we weren't able to have a Vision by Design due to the pandemic. But what we are working on is we're trying to see if it's feasible to do a video on demand version of our boot camp, because there's a lot of people that were interested in attending it. And we've been debating adding that staff component. And it sounds like that might be something that we should throw into the mix. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely reach out and let us know. And Dwight, would love to have you back on the podcast in the future. I'm sure there's many different things we could pick your brain about. And thank you so much for writing the article. And
Sure.
We'll talk to you next time. Thanks.
All right. Thanks.
Well, that's it for this episode of The Corrected View. Remember that this is a community-based podcast, so it's not my opinions about myopia control that are the ones that count, but yours. So let us know what you think by emailing the podcast at thecorrectedview@gmail.com.